you go.
Hello, everybody. This is Scott Homan with the Banana Island Films Project. I am the director of Witness Underground, the documentary. And today we have with us Susanne Brix. And today we're going to talk about three things. We screened our movie here for a second time in Playa del Carmen with a special group, Revolution Cinema with Cine Movil. And as a very special event, we're going to discuss how that went. But it's the second time we did it, not the first time. So we're going to talk about both events and our connection through Philosophy Club here in Playa del Carmen, which has kind of expanded globally more recently. And that's a very interesting project. And actually the main reason I came back to Playa del Carmen to visit friends, especially Susanne. And also she has a project about holistic group therapy for women. How are you doing, Susanne?
Scott, it's great to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
So the screening, just to connect it, we had Philosophy Club and you invited a big group from Philosophy and a bunch of people showed up. How would you describe the event and how would you describe the experience?
It was lovely. First of all, it was not my first time watching the documentary. I'd seen it at the first screening last year. And so for me, it was more about the social part of it because I kind of knew what I was getting into, but nobody else did. I was the only one of our whole group who showed up that had watched it. So it was, I was more open to actually observe others. And you were there. When we started, everything was lovely. And then in the middle of it, it started to rain. And I was like, oh no, everybody's go home now because this is open air. I mean, there was the big umbrellas. And I thought, oh, this is it now. Nah, it's kind of over now. And I thought we're going to lose the after talk and the interview with Ryan. But people were already so hooked that nobody left. They just huddled together. They pulled plastic garbage bags over them, handed out by the food truck owner, Kurt Hernan. He was lovely, and they just moved back and huddling to not get wet, and they were hanging in there, fascinated. And I got a lot of comments from people around me for my table, and as always, people who have not have a personal experience or friend who's been in a cult. We know nothing about it, nothing. So a lot of people were very surprised of, wow, that's what it's like. Because it's from the outside, it's also always very exotic. You know, it's a weird thing. You're kind of curious about it, but as long as you don't meet anyone, and you do meet them, they knock on your door, but you don't ask them, hey, how is life in a cult? You don't, you know. So there's this whole mystery around it, and yeah, it's like seeing veils being pulled off people's eyes, and they go like, wow. And that was the erection, definitely.
Yes. I got a couple reactions. I wanted to compare, give my opinion on the rain thing. I really thought as well people were going to leave. But for like the first 10 minutes, it was right at the kind of logical climax where Ryan's sort of like asking himself questions.
Yes. Where
it started to sprinkle, and I was like, no, this is the meat of the movie. Like, this is the worst time for people to leave. This is the real hook. This is when people get sucked in so deeply. And it's like 30 minutes in, and to an 80-minute film, so I'm almost halfway. And then they just sat there in the rain, and I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah, they got
Their
hooked.
eyes and minds are riveted enough to sit through rain. And then it was like 15 minutes later, kind of as the first big emotional climax hits about the main character's father, where it started to rain heavier, and I was like, oh, now they're really gonna go. And they just like moved 3 meters back to the big umbrellas, and everyone stayed. From what I could tell, nobody left. I was like, this is incredible.
No. I was at the exit table. Nobody went past me. Nobody left. I mean, you have to admit it. It's a warm tropical rain. It's not a.
It was comfortable.
It wasn't cold, but it was soaking. I mean, really pouring down. And the sound system held up. So
it sounded so good too. I was very impressed by the situation.
The
equipment's great.
Yes, super cool. I mean, that's Ricardo. He did a good job. And then of course, when Ryan's brother dies and he comes to the funeral and his stepmother kicks him out of the house, that was like, I mean, I saw people with tears in their eyes.
Wow.
Yeah, people were like grabbing their chests and I mean, the girl next to me, she couldn't believe it. She was like, really, what's wrong with these people? I mean, like, and it was super educational, super educational. And I think now if any of these people present ever meet an ex-cult member, they'll be so empathetic.
Yeah,
they will understand what people go through.
That's a great goal, and I think Ryan mentioned that. We did a Q&A with me in the audience in Spanish and some English. and then Ryan came on the call. So that was like we did a special thing for the audience. And Ryan mentioned that his goals were more of that. Like he really, to tell his story was the hope that people would have empathy for anyone who's gone through that or is in that kind of situation. And I think that's a really healthy, neutral goal for this kind of topic. And it's not just this religion, which also came up in the Q&A. Like this religion has its extremes. Yes. And it's one of the, in my opinion, it's from everyone I've met from different groups, they're like, oof, Jehovah's Witnesses, that's hard. That's worse than Orthodox Judaism and Mormonism in these ways. Like, oof, sorry, man.
You got it badly.
Yeah.
You did.
But at the same time, like the control structures are so similar across all these different groups, whether it's a political group or a religious group or a self-help group or...
They use the same psychology.
Yeah. Same manipulative tactics. And it's not always bad, right? There's obviously groups that mean well and actually do good things. But those are exactly...
Name one. Which one? Hang on. Is there really one that means well? Yeah,
I feel like it's like a matter of time before they go bad.
Most likely,
like get manipulated by money.
Yeah, leadership gets corrupted.
Yeah.
But you get power from people you corrupt easily. It's hard to reign serving and it's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's like if I don't know what I would do in a position like this, but I know also Scientology, for example, they make it also very impossible. It's even harder to leave.
Yeah.
They really get you. I mean, you can't leave. They won't let you leave. That's.
What's your experience with Scientology?
No, documentaries and that great movie on what's his name, Ron Hubbard, with Philip Seymour Hoffman, fabulous movie, and Joaquin Phoenix. It's a movie you want to watch only once. It's so awful, it's so horrible, and the story is so insane that you go, that's if it would be fiction, it would be a piece of shit. But it's a real story. You go like, it's impossible. I mean. And the interviews with ex-members and the shame they feel once they're out of it, that they ever were in it.
Yeah, this is interesting. I've been thinking about that because for years I had shame while in it, but I was never really all the way in it. So the funny thing about my story is I was like, my dad joined it, but we were always like the new people on the fringes who barely took it seriously.
Okay.
And then my mom never joined it, so I had two sides of the family, and they had very different religions. Okay. And so that was really nice because I generally had like a more balanced experience.
Well, you could compare.
Yeah.
You had that choice.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
And like, oh, grandpa's in heaven. Like, no, your grandpa definitely is not in heaven. Like, well, somebody needs to make up their mind. That was like, right? Like, I would like to know.
What's going on?
Everyone's so confident, but it's like the start. That was a bad start for them trying to indoctrinate me because I'm like,
already smart.
The adults aren't.
They don't know what's going on. Yeah.
Do you know the name of that? Was it Going Clear for Scientology, or was it Leah Remini's film? Okay.
But
there's probably more than one.
But I remember the scene. Fabulous cast. The cast was amazing.
Oh, so it was actually fiction.
This is fiction.
Oh, okay.
No, this is Philip Seymour Hoffman, Joaquin Phoenix, Laura Dern, and a couple of others. Really, and it's true. It's all based on what it was, who he was. He was a science fiction writer.
Yeah.
But then they founded a cult on his science fiction.
Ultimately, he's one of the top 3 pulp fiction, science fiction writers of all time in terms of like, maybe not by rating, but like by the amount of material he produced.
Amazing. No, and he's super creative, super brilliant, smart, and the stories he invented about what's going on in the universe, they're fascinating. And he got somehow drawn into, well, now I'm gonna found a religion. He did, and well, his gods came from other planets and had names, and the name planets. It's all fiction.
Yeah.
And and people went for it. They really, really did go for it, and still are. And his private life is shown, how he financed it, and how his closest followers, when he then published more and more and more, they had crises of faith. They said, "What are you writing? I mean, really?" And he went like, "What?" And then he had this one part, that's Joaquin Phoenix part. He's fabulous in it. He's this lost alcoholic, crazy person.
He's an incredible actor.
No. In that movie, he's just like, you hate him. You really go like, what? And it's not an easy movie to watch. It's not entertaining. It's not pretty. It's just the truth, a harsh reality of what it supposedly was like when at the beginning of it. They lived on a huge boat that some people financed out of New York, and it was all illegal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The
that-
Fish, not Fish. There's another. Yeah, there's a name for the boat that's famous in the.
something.
Yeah.
And so I watched it years ago, and it left a mark on me too. And after that, I did watch documentaries, but that was all Scientology, and only through you I got closer to what's it like to be or have been a Jehovah's Witness,
Yeah.
which we all been exposed to somehow. I mean,
Right.
we all see them so
Yeah.
Watchtower at the street corners. Who hasn't?
Mm-hmm.
That's a part of our, I mean, visual. And they come on your door, and you go like, I mean, I've slammed doors in their faces. I don't know how many times. Even, I mean, back in Germany,
Yeah.
in Mexico, in Spain, they're everywhere.
Actually, what's kind of a funny thing I never shared with anybody was on the way to the screening, I walked up to 30th Avenue to get the Colectivo to go down.
You walk past
And I
them.
walked past like a group of 6 women at their cart with their material, and I was like, I don't have the energy or the time right now. And
But
my
you
mind
would
state.
stay there for a moment if you could have had
But
the time.
yeah, and stuff like that happens almost every screening. It's like I
Really?
somehow am on the way, and I'm like, I can't believe
Here they are.
the coincidence of this.
Yeah, that's no coincidence. It's synchronicity.
Synchronicity.
What would you have said to them if you had the time?
Oh, I would invite them to the screen. Invited them. To the
Oh my
screening. I
God!
think there's a movie about this exact religion and their place here in Playa. I could say that.
To lure them in.
Yeah. Even walking like the day after the screening when I last year we did a screening in September.
I was
here
there.
In Playa. You were there. And I walked the next day to the airport past a group of them, and I was like, they like spoke directly to me. I don't remember if I said something or not, but it's like I have so many things I could say, but it's not like that person's the problem. I don't necessarily want to make that person's day terrible,
Yeah.
or like turn their life upside down by like dropping knowledge on them. But sharing the film with them could be useful. Because hopefully they tell their friends, and then secretly they all watch it and don't talk
Yeah.
about it to each other.
Yeah. You know what? I just remember I had one experience in Cancun years ago. I got invited to a talk. I'm all into holistic health. So somebody was giving a talk in Cancun. Somebody was opening a holistic health
What's
center.
that? Psychological drama film 2012. Is that the
There you
psychology
go.
film?
Must have been it.
Thank you.
That was it. And
You confirmed our audio is working well. So.
fabulous. And it was a really old man in his late 80s, south of Mahawal, from one of those huge, was it Mennonites? I don't know
Okay.
what they were. Sitting there with his 3 daughters dressed like the Amish. I mean, really in this old-fashioned long dresses, all with long hair and wearing their, what are they called? Those trousers with the dungarees, is that the word? I mean, it's really like,
Overalls?
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And anyway,
Like real farmer outfits.
and he had this really old Bible on the table. He had his hand on it all the time, and he gave us a talk about sulfur being very important and whatever. And I was just, I couldn't care about what they were talking about. I was just first time I was exposed to really being near a whole family. They all were there. He had like 9 children, and like all sizes, and the incredible arrogance impressed me so much because they were the only ones with the truth,
Yeah.
and we were the non-believers.
Were they speaking in German?
No, they were speaking English.
Where was this? What country?
Cancun, this is
Cancun, right
Mexico.
here,
Yeah,
down the
but
street.
they are of Canadian descent.
Oh.
And they own huge lands. They make the cheese and the da da
Yeah.
da 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 next to Bacalar actually.
Okay.
And then he presented one of his daughters, 18, who studied a liver cleanse or whatever. And that information was so outdated. This is like what we did 15, 20 years ago. And it was the arrogance.
They're just right.
No, and everybody else was stupid. That was the whole, and always.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of that in the Jehovah's Witnesses as
is
well.
there?
Yeah, it's a superiority complex beyond.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think it's one of the great faults of religious groups
Mhm.
is that they really think they're the only smart ones with the direct connection to God, and everyone else is an idiot. And everyone else outside of that, like, it's laughable, right?
Sure.
Because like they're denying all of human knowledge from outside,
Yeah.
all of science. Yeah.
Well, I come from the extreme opposite. My parents were both declared atheists.
Declared
Declared
themselves.
atheists. Yeah, they said no, zero religion, zero
So you grew up
faith.
in that
Zero,
environment.
yes, and it was well, I thought it was normal. Then
Was this East Germany? So like
No,
from
no, no.
communist influence?
No,
or
no, no,
Okay,
Western. And
Susanne is from Germany originally.
that's true. And so, but my experience took me when I was 16. I already knew something's missing here. Something's not right. Something is that what life is really all about? Making money and spending it, and having as best of time as possible. Because that's all there was to it. There was no other. And I was like, this is the, and the spiritual search started there through friends and books.
That's so interesting because people often say, like Christians often have the perspective of atheists must not be moral because they don't obey this book and they don't believe in any gods, definitely not the Christian God. And I'm sure Muslims probably say similar things, and other religions will have a God, and a monotheistic group will say something similar. And ultimately, I think morality, if you took it from the Bible, like I've read the whole book, and I've read many portions of it more than once, and it's not moral. It's disgustingly amoral. It is like psychopathic level hatred, genocidal, xenophobia,
incest,
murderous,
everything.
Violent. Incest is okay, pedophilia is okay, slavery is okay, and like beating and violence for slaves is okay. And like when you're reading through it, it's like, well, none of this really adds up to what they're actually saying from the stage or the pulpit or the ministers. So when you think about getting your morals from a book like that, I'm scared of someone who believes any of that stuff and also has the option to ask for forgiveness, and then you're given a blank slate for any evil that you do.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to atheism, I wonder about this other side. You grew up atheist, which is fascinating, but you felt that there was missing something.
Yeah, totally. Isn't it funny? It's like, well, if maybe, I don't know if I would have adopted or taken over a religion if my parents would have been religious, but they never went to church. I didn't even know what a church was. Wow. I was an adult when I first time was listening to a mass, and I actually was impressed with the beauty of it. In one of those, German old Gothic cathedrals and the whole mysticism, it was like, wow, if you have chorus singing and the organ, but no, I mean, like, it was just like, okay, this is like the movies of the Middle Ages, okay? That was entertaining. And
That's interesting way to put it. Movies of the Middle Ages.
I mean, imagine those people then get and the light coming through the huge
gorgeous art.
No, it's amazing. I mean, really, I understand the total seductiveness of it, but of course, for me, it was I watched it as an outsider. I couldn't attach to any of it, and I spent then investigating. I mean, this is the 90s, so New Age was full on. So I was exposed to all the metaphysical books and I read them all, but it was all just theory. And then my daughter got born when I was 27. And that giving birth at home, that was my first deeply spiritual and religious experience. Because, that was like, okay, there's something out there that's bigger than all of us.
There's more than just my body, physical animal on the planet.
Totally.
Okay.
No,
so what was that? Can you describe what that more is? Something
yes, I can, because, I mean, like logically in my German practical mind, I could understand how my body could produce a baby. But the moment you give birth, this piece of flesh comes out, and that first inhalation, that when she came alive in my hands, looking at me, she was completely conscious. This was a very special birth, very peaceful, beautiful birth, and the vibration in the room was undescribable. There was a presence there that was not just her, but it was everywhere, and it's the magic of this divine moment of her coming to life. Just it was the inhalation. She was like, and here she was. And it's hard to put it in words, but it's the confirmation that we are so much more than just a mind and a body. No, that's not all there is. So that was, and from then on, it was easy for me to relate to, call it source, call it creation of life force or whatever, but I felt it, I saw it, I lived it. So that taught me respect. That was and I stuck till this day. I totally believe that there must be something behind of all this, that our limited perception is not capable of grasping, will never be. This will always be a myth and mystic, and it has to be, because if it wouldn't, we would just integrate it, consume it, and forget about it.
Which thing would be consume and integrate and forget about?
Any belief, any Any
If it was,
any answer to your question
Uh-huh.
would be, if there would be a rational answer to your question,
Mhm.
the existence of something, call it God, call it whatever. If there would be an answer, we would discard it immediately.
that we wouldn't believe it.
No, of course not. Or some people would use it, manipulate others. It needs to stay an unknown.
Mm.
That's the only way we can go on. Because if there's no more mystery, if there's no more myth at all, we're extinguished.
Hmm.
We need that myth, in my opinion.
Did you need it as an atheist growing up?
I was missing it.
Hmm.
I was definitely missing it.
I wonder if it's worse for groups that are so confident, like you mentioned the Amish, but in general, like Christianity, they have, or even Catholicism, which is like the most, at this point, like
Widespread.
defanged religion.
Mhm.
They're so neutral and yeah, they like the fact that they have a whole worldview that's so defined, and it's not necessarily, it's like inspired by what's written in the Bible, but it's not actually what the Bible says. But they have their angels, they have demons, they have a devil, they have a god, they have what else?
A heaven and a hell.
A heaven and a hell. There's like these worlds, right? This whole supernatural universe that feels bigger than just the planet Earth floating around a fiery ball in space in a void in the universe. But like maybe because they're so rigid on what all unknowable things are, like, oh, anything that feels like a spiritual thing, it's either one of these characters that our religion teaches, and so it's like it's given to them that this is what it is. But people have wildly different experiences outside of that, whether they're Catholic or not, or whether they're Christian or not. And I wonder if having it painted for you is worse than having just a yearning for the unknowable that you grew up with. Because then you can seek it based on personal experience. They're like trying to
I feel it's
cut
a privilege.
down the worldview that was created for them.
I didn't have to clean myself of any of that. Nothing was put there.
Yeah.
So it's my personal philosophy is totally based on personal experience and investigation. I read a lot, and I've tried to find answers, and because I always need to understand things. I'm very German in that, very like that's
The
how
knowing rather than
But
the
yeah,
feeling
yes.
knowledge.
The knowledge is important. The answer to questions that we all ask, but there will never be questions that have all the answers. Is there life after death? How do you answer that question? That will always be unanswerable.
Yeah.
No matter how many people come back with experiences.
There are thousands and thousands of people now with their stories published in writing and in YouTube of near-death experiences, NDEs, and listening to them. I just started listening to some of those because I just tried out dimethyltryptamine and public note. And it's so similar, like some of the word, like you use the word source, like connecting to source, or like that was like the word that, or like being connected.
It's repetitive,
That's what I
right?
felt like. It didn't mean that there was a God. It didn't mean that there was like, it felt like there was an intelligence beyond me. And that I've had this theory for years now that's like life itself, being connected to life on Earth. Like we are part of the ecosystem. And the more we are in tune with that and communicate with that ecosystem, that for me is really profound. But we're like so novice at what that is because we've been so disconnected in these last generations, especially, that I don't know what to call that, except for that feels real, that we are part of this great life system on this planet. And I just assumed that ended there as an atheist. And I don't know still if there is more. But what I experienced using that plant was like, and it's that plus a lot more. In fact, we designed that whole system, and it's all code and like it's all coded. We like designed it with math and code. Like everywhere you look, there's code.
Now comes the big word, the matrix. Here we are. It's all code. Right, yeah. But look, an experiment. So we're an experiment. That kind of, I have not a problem with that concept, and it rings kind of a bell because I read Jared Diamond's Collapse. He's
I read that as well.
So good because I mean he's not a great writer. He writes terribly bad. But he's got, I have to say, but the information is great.
Or he wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, and then he wrote Collapse after that as well.
Okay, right? I didn't read the first one. And another message.
I love you.
And so you can see clearly that humans have, it's all trial and error.
Yeah.
And what we are into right now is just another trial.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is actually the result of, what happened in the Age of Enlightenment. Science was born, and we took science as a new religion. So now the gods are now
You
wearing.
can repeat it. At least you can well, we tried that. We think this is true. Here's our hypothesis. We tested it. It seems to be true.
Yeah.
Let's call it a theory. But you can repeat the experiment and get the same result. And that's why it works.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's an enhancement to the scientific theory method.
Well, yes, definitely true. We needed it because the Dark Ages were really, really dark. I mean, superstition, and people were so brutalized. There was no knowledge whatsoever, and so it was good, but it went too far. I mean, you tell a doctor that he should use his intuition, and he'll crucify you. Like, what do you mean? If it's not in the blood test, I'm not gonna go with my gut feeling because the blood test shows whatever. So it's like, that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
We need to
And they've rejected all of the.
It's only science now,
human
and it's only what's on paper, and all that other stuff that we also are. It's that potential is not being used.
Right.
And
we have millions of years of plant knowledge and healing practices and body work.
well, that's all discarded now.
That was the only thing that we had for probably millions of years, at least with our Homo sapiens from 300,000 years ago, at least that long, because we've survived since some ancestors have survived since the period of the dinosaurs, right? So there's been some vast knowledge collected.
Sure, and most of that knowledge has been thrown out of the window
Recently.
Very recently, and which is very sad. We should rescue some of that for sure. But also, we're living. It's you can't stop it from being good for progress. I mean, we've lived in the most peaceful times ever, even if there is war going on all the time. It's not as bad as it was 100 years ago at all.
Largest human population
Yes.
with the least amount of conflict in the last 80 years in all of human history.
Yes.
Plus access
So there's
to water,
and you
food,
can't demonize science. You can't. It's about nor technology, but it needs to be humanized again.
Yeah.
And for example, our health system. This is my sector. It's crazy that it's everything that is an industry. It's corrupt. All they want is to sell. They have not your best interest at heart.
The monetary system, having the entire government, society, and nation states focus completely on financial gain, it's the wrong priority. Because every government system, whether it's communism, socialism, democracy, or any other monarchies, they all have money as a part of their system. But we have something that's extremist. It's that only money is valuable.
No, and our economy is based on growth.
Yeah.
Only growth. If you don't grow, you're dead. So now, I don't remember who said it, but it's a great quote. The mentality of only growth is good is that of a cancer cell or something like that. It was like, what?
It's a broken. It's really not sustainable for the long term.
Of course not. And we know, and we have known for decades.
Yes.
And no change. Now, but now comes the big word. Even if as humanity we apparently have evolved a little bit, it's more peaceful, it's more safe, it's more, mortality rate of infants has gone down thanks to antibiotics and thanks to science, and that's all very wonderful. But have we advanced morally, ethically? Has our consciousness grown? Have we? Because that's what all started in the 60s when, in the 60s there was a huge awakening. There was like, hang on, we don't want to go to war anymore in the United States, which was like, oh, okay. It was the first time the youth said, no, we're not going. Talking Vietnam. While, Second World War, First World War, there was not a chance of protest. Everybody went.
Yeah.
And
every business was essentially nationalized to support the war effort. And it was just like, okay, we're building machines for war now.
Actually, Vietnam, that was a huge step. That was a shift in consciousness. People said, okay, no, we don't want that anymore. And so they just got smarter, and they're still doing it. But pandemic brought another shift, for sure. And in my observation, in my circles, and I spent pandemic here in Mexico, which was great. I mean, we have a very, in that moment, the government was doing everything it was supposed to do, but without overstepping or without going crazy like in some other countries. And the paranoia never hit in, and also the clash between the people who said get the jab, don't get the jab. I mean, sure, people discussed it, but Mexicans are by nature very tolerant, so you don't get it fine. You get it fine. There was not this. I mean, in Germany, they're crazy. They were there. Oh yeah, they went all Nazi again. Seriously, they were bad. And so.
And just for people that don't know, the Nazi Party is really strong in Germany to this day. Like people don't realize that. Like Nazis, they thought are over 80 years ago, but no. Like
well,
they have football teams and they have political representatives and they are in the government and they are actually winning.
No, they're not in government.
They're not in government?
No.
No Nazis in government?
No.
Oh, I've heard there's been a few.
No. No, they have a political party because this is our system. It's a real
political
democratic constitution. Everybody can found a party based on ever. They're not allowed to wear swastikas or raise their arms or whatever, but they're allowed to demonstrate. They're allowed to gather. They're allowed to try to get votes. But they never get enough votes to have any representative in governments. So a couple of years ago, this is actually a tiny anecdote. This is kind of off topic right now, but as you mentioned it, I just need to clear this. It's beautiful. I don't know how many years ago. The Nazi party in Berlin went on a demonstration, and they have, I don't know, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 members, I don't know. So it was publicly known that they would march from here to there on that day, on that hour, totally legal. And 100,000 Berliners just crushed them all around them. They swallowed them. They just walked with them, singing different songs and saying different things.
To drown them out.
To drown them out. And they totally drowned them out. They were not heard nor seen on the media.
Oh, wow.
Because of all the people who came on just for that purpose.
Wow, that's
and
incredible.
Totally peaceful.
Yeah.
No fists flying, no fighting. That's beautiful, is it? I love it. So no, they are present. And but they're not gaining. Yeah, well,
they're a minority.
Totally, no strength. But
we are foolish idiots that will soon find ourselves in hell for not telling the vision of Jesus. Okay, comes the false piece of Satan. Some guy.
What else?
A bunch of nonsense about Jesus and Satan.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's take it from there, though. This is good.
Yeah.
Because we talked about the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible has very little to do with Jesus. I'm actually a fan of the Christ consciousness.
Okay, what is that in your opinion? Because most people...
He came with this beautiful message and he got crucified. And actually, this is very interesting. This is now hard to believe, but Jesus was a prophet only for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't his whole lifetime.
Right, yeah.
He wasn't. I mean, he got the disciples, he got illuminated, he was so inspiring. People started to believe him. I mean, he founded this tiny sect.
Yeah, 12
and,
people.
I mean, it's nothing. And then, the Romans were really good about history writing. No Roman historian, he's not mentioned
Right, hundreds of
anywhere.
years later, Josephus brought him up in like one paragraph or something.
Well, it's like, where was he? Well, he was not important at all. And I mean, in his moment, at his time. But when you take his pure message, it's nothing but beautiful. It is love that, I mean, know thyself and then love, if you don't, that's it. That was all he said, and but what was done.
It was pretty benign information.
Of course it was. So the pure Christ consciousness, it's wonderful. And it's actually, well, if you know a little bit about Hinduism, it's Krishna all over again.
Okay.
So
So there's a lot
Krishna,
of similarities from your perspective.
totally. So Krishna is in a nutshell is unconditional love and universal wisdom. Total connection. So now you think about Jesus applies 100%. So this is I just you need to separate those two because you
The
think
Bible and Jesus.
yes,
Yeah.
please do.
Well, yeah, there's a lot to say on that, but without getting too deep into it, like the Old Testament is a lot of Jewish stories
Sure.
and history and self-grandizement of their culture. And there's some great poetry and some great wisdom and some great songs in there. And some of what I've read some of a Jewish historian who was saying like, okay, when Jesus said this is a quote from this psalm. And when Jesus said this, he's actually quoting this famous Jewish writer from this proverb. And when Jesus said, and it just went back, like basically Jesus was
Interesting.
sort of,
Copying.
yeah, restating something that was famous in Jewish history.
Okay.
And it wasn't actually anything new, but if he was curating his favorite moments of the last thousands of years of Jewish literature. And seeing it that way, it's like kind of cool, but also makes you wonder, like, well, was he even real? Because no one else thinks he's real in history. And so, like, did somebody try to, I mean, because the guys who wrote the Gospels about Jesus wrote them in their 70s and 80s, like
Yes.
30, 40 years later.
Yes.
And it, under the, so Paul sort of co-opted Christianity because he
Yeah.
was like a Christian murderer. He was hunting and killing for the Romans. And then later he's like, I can take over. And maybe he liked them. Maybe he realized he was doing something he didn't like, and he wanted to do something positive. And we have this whole story about how like God talked to him and told him like, now you're the 13th apostle. You replaced the 12th apostle who was the bad guy, Judas. And so he like co-opts the entire Christian movement, and then he later convinces people that knew Jesus, supposedly Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, to write those letters, and none of them agree with each other. Some things they agree on, and some things are totally contradictory, but nothing in like oh, this is a lie. It's just like, oh, it's like a different person's perspective.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's an outrageous amount of information about all of that, but it makes you wonder, like, maybe since Jesus, like, so many characteristics of what is claimed about him in those four Gospels, there's like 25
Fiction.
or more things that are related to Horus from the Egyptians. Like,
Wow.
he died, he was killed in this way, he rose 3 days later, which actually has to do with
It's like a
solstice
rehash.
events.
It's
Like the sun comes down and it stays in there for 3 days, and then
Yeah.
it starts turning the other direction. So it's
yeah,
actually about the
that's the
astronomy.
Zeitgeist documentary.
Yeah, so there's like so all these points from the Zeitgeist. I watched that in the 90s.
That's
as well.
so did I.
Yeah. So
Very illuminating documentary. Highly recommended. Zeitgeist.
apparently, it's like some aspects of it have been like debunked, but like who knows?
Well,
Whatever.
um,
Everyone has their opinion.
just on this topic, I recently read a French author that I read almost all of his book. His name is Emmanuel Carrère, and he has one book. It's called Kingdom, and it's about the early birth of Christianity. And he investigates he's an investigator. It's not fiction. This is based on what he could investigate on Luke, the fourth of the apostles, and what Luke did and what he didn't do. And there's a lot of facts known that where he traveled, where he was, because of the Romans. The Romans knew Luke and they followed him. And also Paul, who turned into Saul, no, the other way around. Saul who turned to Paul. And Paul's letters to the Corinthians, into which was all political situation. And so these tiny little, and Paul wanted to be a disciple, an apostle, but he wasn't. And he wasn't accepted from the others. They shunned him. They said, hey, you're not one of us.
He also never used the word Jesus in all the writings. Half the New Testament, the actual Christian Bible aspect of the Bible is Paul writing.
Okay.
And the other half is like people he coerced into writing.
Oh,
So everything
yeah.
we have is basically Paul doing it or Paul coercing it. And so he never uses the word Jesus, but he uses the word Christ twice, which is just the Greek word for Messiah. So it almost feels like, it's almost like Paul likes the mysticism of the Christ character, but he doesn't actually acknowledge Jesus as being that person.
Kind of. That's what I mean. That read is really, really good.
The one you're talking about
the
with
Kingdom.
Luke.
Yeah, it's just the first 50 years after Jesus' death. What
Yeah.
really happened?
Right.
And why did Paul go everywhere? And he founded all these churches everywhere. He traveled a lot, and Luke traveled with him. And actually, Luke wrote a lot. That is according to Paul, whatever. Yeah, very, very fascinating, and it's
building of a cult, basically. The building of a religion from scratch. And I mean, that's what they're
from one inspiring person,
Right.
Sure, but then the
What a
interpretation.
driven, charismatic person Paul must have been.
Well, they had this one meeting where he got illuminated, according to himself,
exactly. This is,
self-claimed, and but he must have been very charismatic, no doubt.
Well, I guess I would say like Jesus is charismatic, and Paul capitalized on that. As
Probably.
like you have Joseph Smith and the Mormons.
So now he's a
then you have-
marketing genius.
Now you have Brigham Young, who's like, let's turn this into a proper thing
Yeah.
and create rules and laws and like
And
go.
he-
Let's like he reversed a lot of what Jesus said.
But
like,
listen, we're sitting here 2,000
I
years
know,
later
so
talking
annoying.
about this.
Yeah.
This is crazy. So
is.
they have left a mark for
They have,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, no doubt. But back to sects and cults, right? But this is our topic today, and your beautiful documentary. And so at the end of the day, how many people right now on the planet are caught up in a sect? Do we know? Is there an approximation?
Wow, that's a great question. I have no idea on a number.
Probably
But,
millions.
Easily millions. Like,
Yeah.
if you consider like subgroups, like you have Jews as a religion, but you also have Orthodox Jews, which is like a more conservative version. Then you have ultra Orthodox Jews, which is leaning into the cult space.
Yeah.
And then, not that I'm an expert on Judaism, respect. And even with Mormons, you have, I would consider them a very large cult.
Yeah.
And they're really bridging into the religion space. Also, they have ties to aliens. Everyone who wrote all their books are all aliens. I went to their alien wax museum.
Oh my God. I
Total
didn't
side
know.
point if you want to dive in, go to Salt Lake City to the wax museum under the
I
temple.
had no idea. Oh God.
But they also have the FLDS, so the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. I think I got the acronym correct. And those are really culty, and they still do the original leaders' requirements to have polygamy, or you'll never make it to heaven, or
Oh
to their
God.
secondary.
Yeah, they
planet
invent
levels
all
of
kinds
it.
of. So now I have a question.
Mhm.
When does a sect become a religion or a cult becomes a religion?
I think it's when the state recognizes them and people tolerate their bullshit. That's
Oh
my opinion.
wow. Okay. Okay.
Like right now, the
They need to
Jehovah's
be
Witnesses,
around for a while. They need to get large.
Mhm. They need to convince the government to make them tax exempt.
Okay.
It's like they're losing tax exempt status in Europe all over the place right now. The Jehovah's Witnesses are. And Scientology has only gained that in USA and maybe like a few other select countries. And so like they're just coming out of the cult space, but they still have all the culty manipulative tactics. But then
That is
ultimately,
so interesting what you're saying about the taxes. Oh,
Yeah.
Small anecdote. My background is from yoga. My yoga school is international, comes from India, but they have, I mean, schools everywhere. And in France, they were not accepted as a non-profit. So for 30 years, they paid taxes on from what they made from teaching. But they always went from one lawsuit through another. And after 30 years, over 30 years, they won. They got all the bank's money back.
oh wow,
They
their
did.
back
They got it
taxes.
all
Oh,
back,
whoa.
and they bought a castle on the River Loire, which is now one of the most
A yoga castle.
Yes,
That's
totally
cool.
crazy.
Wow.
Talking about taxes and religion, interesting. Very interesting. Okay.
So do you think that this yoga group is a cult? Or they have
Well,
culty manipulative
That
elements?
already happened when I did the teacher training with them over 20 years ago.
Back in Canada, right? Or in
No, that's where they started actually out of
Okay.
India.
Okay.
When the guru's disciple, he sent them into the West to teach yoga, he came to Montreal. It started,
Okay.
this is Shivananda Yoga. And it spread from there. It's now the most global of all yoga schools. It's very Hinduistic because Swami Vishnu Devananda, the founder, Swami Shivananda founded it, and Swami Vishnu Devananda came to the West. So, Hinduistic, born into Hinduism. And so when you now do a teacher training with them, you learn the Hindu chants. You go, Trambakam Yajamahe Sugandhin Pushtivardhanam, and you go like, what am I doing?
Sanskrit?
Yeah, in Sanskrit.
Okay.
And it's like, because you have a very Hinduistic tainted chanting, and you have a Vedanta Advaita chanting. No God is mentioned. That is not religion.
There are no gods
That's philosophy.
Okay.
And the mantra is only a tool, right? It doesn't need to be necessarily religious. And already while doing the teacher training, me and my fellow students, we discussed it. We said, is this a sect? Is this a cult or isn't it? And yeah, we really, because you can become a volunteer. You make no money, but you are taken care of if you join to be a teacher within the system. And it's a system. And there's like 100 swamis globally. They have their own magazines, and they have schools everywhere. They make no money. They pay no taxes. And they wear the same uniform. This is Hinduistic. Orange is the Swami, yellow is the student, and blah, blah, blah. And we were like, And some parents of the people who decided to join, and they decided to join and live within the ashram because they thought on themselves they cannot hold up the discipline to really achieve steps on the way to enlightenment, which is the ultimate goal. They said, no, I need to be in that system. I can't do it on my own. So they joined, they work for free, they make no money, but they have social security, they have food, housing, they have everything. They can marry. And the parents of these people were shocked. They were like, oh my God, our kids joined the cult. And they said, it's not a cult. I can leave any day I want.
This is actually a good defining characteristic that I found through all of my efforts with this project, Witness Underground, is if there's a dignified way to leave, like, and there's a great meme that was basically like showing the two different ways of doing this. Like, if you're like, hey, I'm gonna go, I might not come back. You're like, oh, if you ever come back, no problem. Like, you're always welcome. And the other one was like, hey, I'm taking off. I'm probably not going to come back. It's like, you are satanic. You are, and all these like negative labels for you, and they just try to destroy your character. And it's like, that's what I experienced, and that's what Jehovah's Witnesses experience in general, and other religious groups like Mormonism and Judaism do this to people that leave. Not all, of course. Ultra-Orthodox do this.
Not the case in my lovely yoga school. Not the case.
And so not the case in this group then.
Not at all. Not at all.
You can always go back.
I mean, you have to make a commitment, because once they take you in, they teach you a lot. You learn how to cook Ayurvedic, because you're helping in the kitchen. You do karma yoga.
Education.
Yeah, sure. Or they see what your gifts are, and they say, no, you'd be great administration in the office, and they bring you in, and then you work hours every day to whatever. I mean, the organization is global.
Could you
That's a
recommend
lot. As an experience, it was great.
Yeah. What's it called again?
Shivananda with an S though. It's Sivananda.
Shivananda.
It's shivananda.org. They have schools and in the teacher trainings. I mean, this is actually, they developed the first teacher trainings ever. They lasted 3 months in Canada, but people had to leave their jobs to take the teacher training.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that they could be trained as teachers, because they had to learn everything: meditation, philosophy, about it's the asanas, the postures, which is one small part and not an important part. There's no emphasis on that. You do it twice a day. You need it. This is like oiling the machine, but the rest is much more important. And it's all about energy, breathing, mindset, meditation, and of course, as this is Hinduistic, there is also a lot of bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of devotion. So you clean the altar, you bathe the statues of the Hinduistic gods in milk and yogurt, which is the weirdest thing ever. I mean, like, what am I doing? These are all symbolic gestures. And then there's the karma yoga. As I mentioned, you work without expecting anything in return. And then there's jnana yoga, the study of the scriptures. And then there's Raja Yoga, which is one of those 8 steps in Raja or Ashtanga Yoga. That term is so misunderstood now, because Ashtanga means 8 steps, and it's one of the 4 classic paths of yoga. I mentioned 3 of them: bhakti, devotion; karma, selfless work; and jnana, study of the scriptures. Ashtanga or Raja Yoga, same thing, means it has 8 steps. You start with 5 things you should do, 5 things you shouldn't do, and then comes breathing correctly, sitting correctly. That's your asana. That's the posture. That's the only yoga that now is a multi-billion-dollar business. Then asana, posture. Then comes pratyahara, the withdrawal and control of your 5 senses. Then comes concentration, then comes meditation, and then comes illumination. These are 8 steps. That's a very specific path that you on your own, it's impossible. You need guidance. You need somebody who's walked that path before you. So that's why people join. And they do all my teachers within the organization, they told me, I joined because I knew I couldn't do it myself. And now they're in it 30, 40 years, and they're on the edge of illumination. They're insane. It's like really accomplished human beings.
Have you kept up in touch with these people?
Not at all.
Okay, but you see them from afar?
And now, I mean, with the people I studied with, yes. Okay. But if I'd go back to but this is because I'm living on the other side of the planet now.
Yeah.
So if I'd go back, I might stop by in the yoga, but now nobody there would know me anymore, because they shift. They shift all the time. But I tell you something, this is the only certificate I have that is on my wall. It's still on my wall, my teacher training certificate.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Buenas tardes.
Estamos grabando un podcast ahorita. It's okay. Buena verte.
Do we have comments?
We're at 50 minutes. Let's see, we have some comments. Some guy talking about Satan more. Oh, en español también, Mom. Think about France. Sorry, it's a little hard to read. Huge paragraph. Jesus tipped over the money table of religion, similar to apostates today. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. So us apostates are doing the work of Jesus. Jesus said, "You are from the devil, your father, and the father." Joseph Smith, Russell, and Rutherford, these are the leaders of Mormonism, and then witnesses, they all had a vision, and a vision started a cult.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so we're at 50 minutes and it is 5:25. We have to be there at 6:15, right?
Yeah, that's fine. We
Okay,
get there.
we're good.
Well,
But,
we good.
so
We're good.
let's we
move
have
on.
two more things, and maybe we can just quick wrap up the film festival thing.
Sure.
Or the film screen.
What do you want to say?
So we had like 70 people on the beach screening for our international premiere last year with Cine Movil. And this year, or this time, last Friday, was about 50 people. And both times I did a Q&A in Spanish. And then this time we added Ryan Sutter from the movie, who came
That
in
was
live
so
as a
good to
video
see
call.
him. It was so cool having him there live.
Yeah.
It was very emotional. I loved it.
Emotional for you or for others?
Well, for everybody, because first of all, we had seen him there, talking, sharing his story, and showing himself so vulnerable. And then there he's live on screen. Hi, right? It was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And it was actually me who yelled, "Are you married, handsome?"
So
I
funny.
just wanted to lighten it up a little.
It's actually funny. 'Cause
I wanted to see him laugh, and he did laugh.
And his wife was like, "I'm here behind the camera." It was really fun.
It was a great moment, yeah.
Can you make a comparison between the two, or do you think is there a
The
difference?
two screenings?
Yeah,
Um,
because I want to do this. If you're watching, I want to do this more around the whole world. So I want to help me build the tour of doing live screenings, and I'll show up if I can, or if not, we'll do a live screening, or so we'll do a screening with a video call. So
cool.
let me know where you want this to happen.
Personally, I preferred the second one.
Okay.
The first one, the setup was for me personally too leisurely, like on the beach in a lounge chair, the feet in the sand, the starry night above. There was too much distraction. It was too nice. It was too beautiful to then get into. It was like, and so, we were drinking wine. Somebody was handing out wine. So it was like a social event, and the documentary didn't. For me, this is very personal, right? I totally watched it. I totally got it. I focused on it. But there were kids playing in front of me. There was a dog running around, and somebody never got it in English and continuously asked about translation into Spanish. It was a little tough, like to really be able to focus. But I was in the first or second row. That helped.
Yeah.
And now in the second one, as I didn't have to focus so much on content anymore, I could enjoy it more. Okay. I could watch other people, and as I brought a whole group of people, I wanted to know, are they happy that I brought them? Then you ask yourself, was it the right thing to do? And yes, 100%. And so congratulations on your second screening right here.
Yeah.
Super cool.
I think what's valuable to me is I went to a lot of film festivals, and 4 of them were in person. And we had some big ones, like the one in Minneapolis was incredible at Sound and Scene. The one in New York, I feel like we hustled a bunch of people that would never have gone to see that movie, but we met them and we shared some friendship with them, so they showed up. So we like packed a small room with like 40 people, so it's a little bit smaller but similar to Friday. And that ended up having a great Q&A. But for the most part, the film festivals were digital and remote because of the pandemic.
That was then, of course, yeah.
So now being able to do it and like whether you saw it already or not, because it's now available globally. I don't know. I feel like it's an incredible moment to share and my work of art, but also an social impact project that I spent my last 6 years of my life on, and it feels really, really good, and it feels like there's a lot of value there.
True.
And this is like a interesting. I mean, I get a lot out of it. So for me, it's like living my dream.
Yeah. No,
But
you get the
really...
instantaneous feedback.
Yeah.
It's live. You're there with the people, and people look at you and ask you questions, like as it happened last time, and ask Ryan questions. That's worth gold.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
It's really special.
And I brought a cool gang of people also.
Yeah.
The philosophers of Playa, of course.
Yeah. A couple DJs were there, and I've just been walking around town the last couple days, and this one woman was like, "Hey," and I was like, "Do I know you?" She's like, "I'm a DJ. I was at your screening."
So cool.
Yeah. So that was really cool. So we had a lot to share about that. She loved the live music parts. So I was like, "Oh, that's praise I haven't gotten before." Because that was my like creative input to make the film cohesive.
Yeah.
And then the other woman was
And
saying,
it does make the film cohesive.
Yeah.
Without the music, it wouldn't be the same. At all.
Yeah.
And this is about all these people, all of them that show up, and if they wouldn't have been musicians, they wouldn't have been able to leave, maybe.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And then another DJ last night, I was at a pharmacy because I've not been feeling well. Someone there, and she's like, "You're the guy, you're the director." I'm like, I feel so famous in this. I mean,
You are.
It's on 300,000, and no matter where I go, musicians are like, "Your film is amazing." I'm so impressed.
So cool.
So I want to get to philosophy. So we're going to go to Philosophy Club. Thank you for your praise and input, and for all of your support. But with the Philosophy Club, you've been a part of that for a while. Can you give us a brief overview for the audience about what it is and why you're a part of it?
Okay. Just to clarify, you and I, we met in Philosophy Club.
Yeah.
That's first of all. A couple of years ago, two and a bit years ago, a friend, I had heard about it, that people meet weekly in a friend's place to talk about given topics. And I was like, yeah, I'll go one day. But then you do this mentally, and then until it really happened, it was like 6 months later. At Lunada, I think that's where we met, and I met Jeffrey and Pearl, the founders. I was completely open-minded, and from the first meeting on, I said, "This is it. This is what I've been looking for." Because
socially,
socially and the content, because it's a meeting of 2 hours. You go there, and Jeffrey gives an introduction speech of 2 minutes to the newcomers of what's going on. And what is going on is this. There's a topic that will be discussed in groups, because if there's 35 people, not everybody gets to talk. So we split into groups, which 6-8 people. We shift in space a little bit so that we have no acoustic contamination from other groups. There is no phones on the table, no consummation of anything except your water bottle, maybe. It's pure. It's just a deep conversation on anything. Anything goes as a topic. And sometimes you go on in was thinking, oh, this is going to be a great topic. And it's kind of like, okay, because the people are not really excited about it. And then you think this is a boring topic, whatever. And the people go wild and you are totally drawn into it, and the 2 hours fly past. So this is about being heard. And it's not about classical philosophy. It's about personal philosophy. It's what we share is our personal opinions on the topic.
Yeah.
And you get people from all over the world, which is, of course, also very nice in Playa del Carmen. We have, after New York, we are the city with most nationalities.
Wow, I didn't know
Isn't it
that.
crazy? What?
Just give some
yeah.
input on that. We were hanging out with a Bulgarian the other day. I think, what was the other woman who had the vegan restaurant?
Lithuania. Canada, no, Matt is American, I think, and then there was Stephen, American, and the Scottish lady.
And we've had also Chinese and German and
of course
people from Spain, Mexico, of course.
We had a couple from Ethiopia. We have Nigerians. I mean, literally.
I've been hanging out with Ukrainians and Russians who are friends who come to the thing.
Yes,
together.
of course, totally friendly. Yeah. So no, this is amazing, and of all ages.
Yeah, that's cool too, like 20s to 80s.
It's really cool, and you never know who you'll be in a group with, because this is random. I mean, sometimes I rig it because I'm boss, and I want to be with somebody in a group. Of course, that's my privilege, but you never know who you'll be in a group with. Yeah. And I've been going steadily, and as most people here are digital nomads, or here for the season, there's a huge shift in our chat group. We're over 500. And our founders, they've been all over the planet now, but by now we have 6 or 7 groups. Just new for the second week. Today was the meeting in Tokyo.
Tokyo.
It's Tokyo, Vancouver, Valencia in Spain. There used to be one in Malta. There's another one right here, and I can't remember. So it's growing, and the goal is to make it an international large movement. It's already registered as a non-profit organization.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which country?
I have no idea. Probably Canada, because that's where Jeffrey is from. That's where our founder is from. And our founder started this whole thing. He had what is this? He's on TikTok. And he posts videos on Stoicism, and it's super interesting. Short clips, very well made.
And the host.
Yes, okay. And he also wrote a book. And this this movement.
And even like a pamphlet on how to start one of your own if you want to do
That
a
is
chapter.
coming. That is coming. That
Okay.
exists online already
Yeah.
in school. And if you want to start a philosophy club, they're figuring it out. Oh, that's Mexico City, is it? The other club.
Okay.
And actually, it's not so easy. We found out that the Mexico City club started without them ever having been to a club meeting.
Mm.
So they
That's
got,
cool.
the,
Okay.
yeah,
Fully digital, fully detached from it.
but difficult.
Ah.
Difficult
They
because
don't have the framework set.
they don't get the vibe.
Okay.
Because the vibe is like really humble.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever the host
You don't
is,
have to be right. No, it doesn't matter what someone says. or
agree
do you
to
with them
disagree.
or not.
It's
Yeah.
about to agree to disagree. And and we've had people flaming up, sometimes you have to calm it down a little, but never have we had any violent outbreaks.
The only thing that I've had a challenge with so far, and I think we've agreed on the solution, has been people that come with a religious bent where they're like trying to proselytize religion. It's like the only negative I've seen is Christians.
Why
it's
is
like,
that?
it's not that like I have a thing against Christians. It's just really annoying to have someone say like, if you don't agree with me, it's a problem, or like this is what the Bible says. It's like, no, you're missing the entire point of this. whole thing.
Well, actually, we've had Muslims that were less intensive than some of the
Really?
Christians. Yeah, sure. Broad-minded, tolerant Muslims. You're like, oh, that's possible.
Wow.
Yeah. So we love Philosophy Club. We'll have a meeting in a little while now.
Yeah, we're going
Today,
to.
our topic is culture.
Yeah, it's actually really broad, and I have so much to say about that.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
And one more thing. Every week, the topic is published on Sundays, and there always come 5, 6, 7 questions for it to get your brain
Yeah.
going to, there's so many aspects to to it that you didn't even think about. So yeah, if you ever come to Playa del Carmen, join us at Philosophy.
Or any other cities.
Oh, sure. Now you can join in Mexico City, in Vancouver, in Hamilton, Canada, in Tokyo, wherever you are. Check it out.
Yeah. Okay, and then finally, so we have, it is 5:37, so we gotta go real soon. You have
Yeah,
20
3 minutes.
Okay. All right. So in 3 minutes, can you give us to like eliminate your time, but holistic group therapy for women?
Yeah.
What is the new thing you're working on?
Yeah, I'm actually it's old and new. I've done this before. I've stopped it because I got distracted with a beautiful creative social project that has absorbed me for the last 6 years, and now it's time to go back. Life is pushing me back into it. So a lot of therapy has been going online ever since pandemic and has not come back to personal experiences. And that needs to be reversed. Me as an ex-yoga teacher, retired yoga teacher, I'm,
You didn't get kicked out of yoga.
they shunned me. No, I left disgusted years ago because it's not. As I mentioned earlier, it's all about posture, which is just one tiny part. Yoga is a mental discipline. It's got very little to do with your body. Your body is just, it needs to function okay so that you can sit still long enough to focus on what is really important.
Internal.
Yes, that's what it is. So it got all corrupted. But okay, that's another story.
Commercialized.
Yeah, sure, like everything. But back to the therapy. So people don't realize that. I mean, people do have experience of this, but when you bring 10 people, 15 people in one group together physically, and it also works when everybody's on their computer all over the world in a mental space. But if you do it physical, you can work with energy that is absolutely amazing because you can bring each other up if you have somebody guiding you. And once the energy of everybody is up, you can do therapeutic work much deeper, much more efficient than when you work one by one. So that's the purpose of it all. I know that there is a demand for it. And we start with a 6-hour workshop, and I don't do it. I'm not a yoga teacher anymore. I'm an artist, okay, but who I also am is a holistic kinesiologist. It's a holistic therapy that allows me to use a certain neurotransmitter to communicate with your organism and your subconsciousness. Old, it's 50 years old, but it's not been so dispersed. And I do these workshops together with a psychologist. So we work hand in hand, and we use about 6 or 7 different techniques in the 6 hours we work together with people. And the goal is to make it grow into a weekend retreat and maybe take it from there even into a week-long retreat. It'll take a while to get there, but that will be a life-transforming experience, and a little opposed to what is going on in where I live, where we are at the coast here in the beautiful Riviera Maya, where it's gotten so, shall I say it? I'll say it. Pseudo-shamanistic, romantic, infantile, ritualistic pseudo-therapies. That's going on everywhere, all the time. It's for little children. It's very sweet, but it has no effect on you whatsoever if you jump into an ice bath for 5 minutes and breathe, or if you, and only because everybody else is doing it and because it's such a cool thing to do. It does have benefits physically, right? But and then there's all the mushrooms that people take without integration of the information they are access to while being on. All this is just doing more harm than good. So we need to counter that with some solid work. And not that I'm against that you go and have your cacao ceremony with your friends in a full moon night. That's all very lovely, but it doesn't take you anywhere. Let's face it.
So you're saying romantic infantile pseudo-shamanism is not what you're doing.
That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Right. That's good. Okay. When do you think you'll begin your first?
I have a date.
You have a date?
I have a date, 27th of July.
Wow, it's coming right up.
Yeah, no, we're still in June. Yeah, 27th July. I found a beautiful venue. It's a house, the entrance of the park of Senses near Ishkaret.
Okay.
Yeah, gorgeous, super location, and I'm working right now on the flyer that'll come out in a couple of days. I'll send it out, and I know it will have to grow, and it will. I'm sure. I've done this in Europe 15 years ago.
Is there a place that people can follow you to get to know, and trust you?
Yeah.
And,
there will
and
be
sign up if they want to.
There will be, and there is already an Instagram page that I opened like
starting.
3 days ago,
Okay.
and it's me myself following myself.
I'll double your follower count.
Thank you. That sounds great. You double my follower amount, and it's called Sanate.
Sanate.
Sanate, which is Spanish, and it means heal yourself, and it means Sanate con Susane. That's if you want to look it up. I'm right there.
Sane is your kind of personal nickname.
Sane is my, well, it's funny. I've almost undergone a little identity crisis last April when I traveled to Mexico City and met friends from 30 years ago. And when I moved to Mexico over 30 years ago, I had a hard time adjusting to the Susanna version of my German name, Susanne. And I tried to teach people how to say my name. And Mexicans, and in Spain also, they Spaniardize every name. Which is hilarious because first time somebody told me about Jorge Federico Handel, I was like, who are they talking about? Jorge Federico?
Oh, George.
That was Georg Friedrich Handel, the famous composer. And Jules Verne, who's Jules Verne, is Julio Verne. And I'm like, so they do this with every name. So they did it with mine too. And I slowly, finally swallowed the bitter pill of being a Susanna. And I totally got used to it. And when I went now, months ago to Mexico, I met friends from back then, and they all like, Sane, how are you? And I'm like, oh my God, that used to be me. So I'm like, right now I'm back into, okay, it's Sane again, and I'm re-educating all my friends.
Okay, Sane.
That's me, yeah.
Okay. So we'll put the link in the description.
Super.
Yeah, everybody, thank you for popping on live and for hanging out. Susanne, Sane Brix, and
nice to meet you all.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Good.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
Any last words?
Go. Any last words? Yeah, well, let's go to Philosophy Club right now.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Oh yeah, that's the guy talking about Satan still. Cool.
Oh, still there's a Satanist. Okay.
Yeah. He's the true Christian. He's worshiping the secondary character of Christianity, Satan.
You will always have people like this there.
It's fun. There's more engagement that way, a little more controversy.